Joining us now for What Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin.
Good morning.
Good morning. That's me.
That's
me.
Who I got to bond with in the hair salon yesterday.
Hey, yes, exactly. Vimbai and I bumped each other at the hair salon, and I love your hair, Vimbai. It is gorgeous.
Well.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
Tactically drew attention to your hairdo.
Well, no.
She was sitting beside two men. Did they compliment your hair this morning, Vimbai? Did they say anything? Hey,
Vimbai.
No problem.
Men never notice.
Vimbai,
yes.
how much is your hair?
This one. Do you
But I can't notice
this
because
is African style.
because I'm not your Oluwori.
Please,
There's an Oluwori there.
Okay.
Let's not take
Femi,
that.
me too, I can't know because there's an Oluwori. It's your Oluwori that notices your hair.
Okay, but where is he?
Eh?
Exactly. All right, good morning to you viewers. Let me tell you what is happening around the world. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores have pleaded not guilty to drug trafficking charges in a New York court where he declared he is still president. That's amidst a dramatic first appearance. Now, transported to the courthouse in handcuffs, surrounded by armed officers, Maduro claimed he was a prisoner of war. His lawyers are expected to contest the legality of his arrest, arguing that he is immune from prosecution as a sovereign head of state. Now, inside the court, Maduro was asked to confirm his identity. In response, this is what he said. I am, Sir Nicolas Maduro, of the Republic of Venezuela, and I am here kidnapped since January 3rd. I was captured at my home in Caracas, Venezuela. Those were his words. He was interrupted by the judge who told him that, listen, in terms of story, we'll get into that. So as I said, he said, I was captured at my home in Caracas, Venezuela. Now, moving on, we do know that Maduro is represented by the same lawyer who represented Julian Assange. Now, he also reportedly wrote pages upon pages of notes while he was in court. And when he was asked to submit his plea, he said he was innocent. Now, his wife, Celia Flores, also pleaded not guilty and referred to herself as First Lady. She had visible bandages. And in the most dramatic moment of the hearing, a man in the gallery called Maduro an illegitimate president, telling him that he will pay on behalf of Venezuela. In response, Maduro said, "In the name of God, I will be free." Dramatic scenes in the courtroom. Now, protesters did gather outside the court with some brandishing placards reading "USA hands off Venezuela" and others saying "Thank you, President Trump." Meanwhile, Delcy Rodriguez, she was sworn in as Venezuela's interim president. She praised Maduro and his wife as heroes. So we're keeping our eyes and ears across what's happening in Venezuela. Nevertheless, the United Kingdom government is facing criticism for its muted response to the US arrest of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, with opposition parties accusing it of failing to uphold international law. Now, the UN Security Council did gather on Monday to discuss the situation. It was an emergency meeting with the United Kingdom suggesting that it will abstain if a resolution criticizing the United States intervention is voted on. Meanwhile, Downing Street has indicated that Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper will make a statement to MPs on the situation, but critics have argued that the government's response so far has been insufficient. Now, even a Labour MP, his name is Steve Witherden, he said, the government's response has been insufficient. The post-war order is in tatters. Our foreign policy assumptions are outdated and we need to realign. The Liberal Democrats, they have called for a release of internal government advice on the legality of the US operation, with spokesperson Callum Miller saying that Trump's intervention in Venezuela are surely in violation of international law, yet our tight-lipped Prime Minister is refusing to call that out. Let's move on to the Middle East. Saudi Arabia has publicly accused the United Arab Emirates of undermining its national security, exposing a deep rift between the two Gulf Arab states. The unusually blunt charge reflects growing Saudi unease with the UAE's increasingly independent foreign policy, particularly in Yemen, Sudan, and in the Horn of Africa. Now, Riyadh is concerned that the instability or state collapse in these regions could have grave consequences for its own national security. That's as the dispute centers on the UAE's role in Yemen, where it has supported separatist groups, and also in Sudan, where it has significant economic economic interests. Saudi officials worry that the UAE's actions could embolden extremist groups such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which have a presence in that region. Meanwhile, the UAE has denied allegations of undermining Saudi national security, framing its foreign policy as part of a broader commitment to responsible leadership and enduring progress. However, the dispute has raised concerns about the potential consequences for global trade, as both countries are major oil exporters. And our last story on today's edition of the World Brief looks at the African continent. We're coming home. Now, journalists covering Uganda's 2026 election campaign have been facing increasing violence and intimidation from security forces and others, raising alarm about press freedom and democratic transparency. Now, reporters covering campaign events have been beaten, detained, harassed by security forces, despite clearly identifying themselves as media. Press freedom groups warn the attacks come as President Yoweri Museveni seeks to extend his decades-long rule, raising concerns about transparency and the integrity of the vote. Now, Uganda does head to the polls next week. Next week's also on the 15th of January, nevertheless. Let's take a look at our newspaper headlines now. As ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. This Day has a range of stories. This unfortunate story, the 9 soldiers dying, 5 seriously injured in this mine blast and ambush in Borno, obviously terrible. Another story on This Day, it does report that there's been a heated clash between FCT Minister Nyesom Wike and APC National Chairman Ajibola Basiru over River State politics and Governor Similaye Fubara's second-term prospects. Now, Wike warned Basiru essentially to stay out of Rivers affairs, while Basiru accused Wike of overreach and demanded his resignation from the Federal Executive Council. This deepens tensions within the ruling parties. Let's see what happens there. Also on the front page, This Day does report that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has nominated former Senator Magnus Abe and Adegbite Ebiowe Adeniji as chairman of the boards of the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission and the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, respectively. Their names have been submitted alongside 19 other nominees, and the president has forwarded their names to the Senate for confirmation, urging swift approval to strengthen regulation in the oil and gas sector. It is Tuesday, and Tuesday means that we also take a look at The Advocate. The Advocate is Onikepo Braithwaite's column in our legal insert, and this week she argues that the trust in government, it must be earned essentially through transparency, respect for the rule of law and accountability, not just rhetoric. Now, her column this week condemns renewed terrorist attacks in Plateau State, in Niger, and also criticizes the government's reactive approach to security and warns that alleged alterations to National Assembly passed tax bills undermine democracy. Now, let's take a look at the Daily Sun this morning. The Daily Sun does report that the Federal Ministry of Education will enforce stiffer measures against exam malpractice. It's just a story on the bottom here. And essentially, these new measures, they're going to be doing this for the 2026 SSCE. So these new measures include randomized question sequencing, unique learner IDs, stricter supervision, a prohibition of last-minute school transfers for SS3 students, and new continuous assessment submission timelines to ensure transparency and accountability. Well, let's take a look at The Punch. The Punch does report again that the African Union has extended the mandate of the multinational joint task force against Boko Haram in the Lake Chad Basin for another year. This will now start from February 2026 to January 2027. Now, the MNJTF comprises of Nigeria, Republic of Benin, Cameroon, Chad. They will all continue operations such as Lake Sanity 3, while the African Union called for increased funding, cross-border intelligence sharing too. In addition to that, The Punch also reports that Anthony Joshua may quit boxing. Now, his uncle, Adedamola Joshua, did reveal this update, saying that the former world heavyweight champion is seriously considering retirement after he was involved in a fatal car crash last month, which of course killed his 2 close friends, Sinagami and Abdul Latif Ayodele. Very sad news there. And the Daily Independent, let's take a look at that this morning. Now, the Daily Independent does report that Nigeria's agriculture sector in 2026 could grow significantly if policy, consistency, investment, technology, adoption, climate resilience, and all that other good stuff is conducive and prioritized. Let's take a look at the New Telegraph. The New Telegraph does report, again, some politics now. So we've got your state governor, Seyi Makinde. He has reshuffled his cabinet. He's sacked SSG Adeyemo and appointed Professor Babatunde as her replacement, with other key appointments in budget, energy and public works. Now, still on the front page, at the downside, we've got the New Telegraph reporting that US President Donald Trump claims about 33% of Nigerian immigrant households rely on public benefits. Now, his administration has also expanded travel bans and exposed stricter visa regulations on Nigerians and other countries. This is part of a broader immigration measure that we're seeing with the new Trump administration. Let's take a look at our UK papers this morning. So we've got the Daily Mail, and the Daily Mail does lead on President Trump's possible territorial ambitions for Greenland and the implications for NATO. Meanwhile, we do have the I newspaper. And the new paper this morning says that older drivers in the United Kingdom will be banned from the roads if they fail mandatory eyesight tests. So this is under new proposals. Drivers over 70 would face driving bans if they fail to pass driving tests. So these are our newspaper headlines and our world brief. Love to hear your thoughts.
So real quickly, I just want to knock this out. I don't think whoever the uncle Ademola Joshua is should be speaking for the Joshua family, because in the first place, he didn't even see Joshua when he was in the hospital. So he has no right to be making big pronouncements like Joshua might not be able to box again, please. And I think people should not really even believe that. I think, you know those kind of uncles
now.
Too
soon.
But you know those kind of uncles. We all have them in our families.
Yeah, you got the name enough, and it kind of automatically makes you a spokesman.
Yeah,
we
all have uncles like that. But knock that up. As regards Nicolas Maduro, yes, he has a right to say he was seized. You might have qualms against Maduro. There's been allegations. At first, it was fentanyl, but now they're charging him for cocaine. So you can see how the allegations shift and all of that. But the way America did it was wrong. And he has a right to say, I was captured.
Yes, he said he was kidnapped.
And they are taking him to a court that is being headed by Helston, a Jewish person. You can see the Jewish relationship with Iran, and somebody that had first prosecuted a co-defendant on Maduro case in 2011. A 92-year-old judge, for that matter. And also, he has a right to rebuff, and I'm happy he has got a good attorney in the person that defended Julian Assange. Because what America did impacted on the sovereignty of Venezuela. And America wants to now do deals with anybody. Now they're doing deal with a Chavista, the incumbent vice president of Venezuela, to be able to stabilize the government. Will that work? I don't think so. The quick wins they want with oil is a long-term development, because when you see where the oil is in Venezuela, it's in the eastern part of Venezuela, and it's very, very hard to extract because it's dense, forested region. And you need a lot of investment. Some people are saying over $100 billion. So this your idea of getting geopolitical edge by saying, okay, let's shush China out of Venezuela and not doing it the right way is entirely wrong. And that's why a lot of people are talking about Greenland already. Because if you can do this to Venezuela, obviously you can do it to Greenland, it's behind Greenland. And the silence from Europe is so loud. And that's why we keep on talking about, when will Europe stand tall to Trump?
This is it.
Yes, sir. It seems it's a game of personal interests now. So, many are choosing to remain silent in the face of this huge issue, this huge global injustice, because they don't want to get dragged in, because it seems anybody can get dragged in. But in all of this, yesterday, while the court appearance was happening in Venezuela, we saw the inauguration of the now acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, who was former vice president, and who is still a question mark, because many people are asking, where does she really lie? Is she going to play ball with Donald Trump, or is she loyal to her principal, who is now indisposed? However, what we did see in the scenes during her inauguration was we saw her overwhelming support from Nicolas Maduro's son, Nicolas Maduro Guerra. And also in her inauguration, she pledged her allegiance to Bolivar. Now, this is an interesting development for me, because when things like this happen, I'm always interested in the law of unintended consequences. What has happened in Venezuela? What has happened in Venezuela is that the militant groups known as the Colectivos have now started rising up, because there's a power vacuum. So what are they doing? They're taking controls of neighborhoods. They're taking controls of also the oil regions. And the worry is that they're going to start sabotaging pipelines in a very similar way that we've seen happen in this part of the world regularly. But they're saying that this is now a fight against imperialism, that this is a fight against colonialism, and that if America thinks they're coming to take oil, they will sabotage those efforts. What has happened? We've seen the oil price has gone up already this morning. And now, still on the issue of oil, why is Venezuelan oil so important? I know many people have spoken about the sheer resource that's available, over 300, is it 300 million, 300 billion barrels?
3 billion.
303 billion. However, a lot of people are not talking about the type of oil they have, which is heavy oil. Now, why is heavy oil important? Heavy oil is important because if you look at the refineries in America that are now becoming moribund because heavy oil is in short supply globally, Venezuela is a producer of heavy oil. If you look at the refineries in Texas, the one in LA, they need that heavy oil, and Venezuela is the only place they can get it. Places like Nigeria, we have the light oil, the Bonny Light, and so forth. So there's all those dynamics playing. I hope there's no insurgency brewing.
Okay, let me just make a few comments. The first thing, Maduro yesterday, one thing I noted was that he said, one, that he's innocent. The wife, in fact, said, okay, they were completely not guilty. He made a point that he was captured, and he said he's a prisoner of war.
Yes.
You recall that in 1989, during the trial of Manuel Noriega, Noriega's lawyers insisted that he was a prisoner of war. And under the Geneva Conventions, there are specific ways in which you can treat a prisoner of war.
Yes.
And that was why Noriega was put in something like a house arrest for about 20 years, and he was allowed access to certain basic privileges that a prisoner of war would be entitled to.
He also surrendered, so perhaps that...
Yes, so in this particular case, it's instructive that Maduro is saying right from the beginning that he's not just innocent, he's a prisoner of war. The third thing about Delcy Rodriguez, she has already told President Trump that she will do whatever America wants. However, President Trump's response is that she has no option anyway, in the matter. But it's not likely that we'll make a Chavismo, a person who is associated with Chavez ideology, the president of Venezuela. They will probably be looking in the direction of Maria Machado, who is the opposition leader and the Nobel laureate. But the trial is likely to take a very long time. It's not as if it is automatic. However, China has spoken up in support of Venezuela, and it says its economic interest in Venezuela runs into about $4.8 billion in the last 2 decades or thereabouts, and that is interested in protecting that, and that America should release the couple who have been arrested. But very quickly, let me talk about Saudi Arabia versus UAE.
Sure.
They used to be friends, allies. In fact, in 2015, they came together to fight the threat of the Houthi rebels that were backed by Iran in Yemen. But by 2014, the Houthi rebels, 2014, 2016, the Houthi rebels had already seized Yemen to become the major power in that area. And so you had a lot of factions, militias coming together. The northern part is controlled by the militia group, whatever it remains of the official government of Yemen, backed by Saudi Arabia. It now turned out, the parting of ways with UAE, is that the UAE is now supporting the Southern Transitional Council that is in control of the southern part, which is thinking of returning Yemen to the situation in 1990, when in that southern part there was some kind of independent republic in that area. Now, this has implications for the security of Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia has issues with Yemen, also Sudan.
Yes.
And the whole issue is economic. Access to the Red Sea and the two major straits, the Strait of Hormuz and the Strait of Barnabas, which is used to transport crude oil.
Yes.
So there is that strategic interest involved. However, what Abu Dhabi, UAE is saying is that, look, they are just fighting ISI and other insurgents around the place, which is not true. And that was why the supply that they gave to the people in the southern part had to be attacked by Saudi Arabia. But beyond all of that, Saudi Arabia sees itself as the golden boy, the golden country in the Middle East, and that other countries should follow what he does. So UAE has been trying to assert itself. However, both of them will be mediated by the US to prevent escalation, since both of them are friends of the United States. Anyway, not enough time.
Never enough time, never enough time. Thank you so much, Adefemi,
Always a pleasure.
for that insightful take of stories around the world.